She was screeching like she'd been dunked into a vat of acid, arms flailing, bridal makeup streaming down her face in streaks that made her look like a deranged raccoon. My backyard had transformed into a frothing white sea of foam, and somewhere underneath it, Catherine's $1,000 heels had vanished, along with her dignity. Bridesmaids were slipping around like cartoon characters. One groomsman was face down in the remnants of the mimosa bar, and the DJ was yelling that his equipment was definitely not waterproof. I stood calmly on the porch, glass of lemonade in hand, remote control in the other. "Well, you said you wanted a pool party," I called out. Just didn't specify who it was for. It all began a week before the chaos. I live in a suburban neighborhood where peace is mostly preserved by fences, manicured lawns, and minding your own business. But Catherine never got the memo. She had recently become the HOA president after a nasty smear campaign against the previous guy for failing to trim his hedges symmetrically. She swooped in like a tyrant with a pastel clipboard and a mission to turn the neighborhood into her own personal utopia. At first, I thought she was just overly enthusiastic about community standards. That illusion shattered when she showed up at my door one Monday afternoon, unannounced. Dressed like she was headed to a wine-tasting gala, she was dragging behind her a terrified-looking wedding planner and a small dog in a tutu. Without even saying hello, she stepped onto my porch and did a dramatic 360-degree turn, as though she were raiding my house for some reality TV show. She then fixed her gaze on me, like I was a butler who'd forgotten to iron her napkins. "Your pool," she began without hesitation, "is just perfect for my bridal party. The natural lighting, the patio space, the minimalistic stone trim, it practically screams classy pre-wedding vibes. We'll need it next Saturday. I'll have my planner coordinate the catering." I blinked, convinced I'd misheard her. "Wait, you're asking to use my pool?" She waved her hand dismissively like I was being dramatic. "Don't be silly. I'm not asking. I'm telling you in advance so you don't embarrass yourself by being unprepared. I know you're probably on a bridal event." I stood there, stunned for a moment. "No," I said firmly. "That's not happening." Her head snapped back like I'd slapped her with a flip-flop. "Excuse me." "You heard me," I said, keeping my tone even. "I'm not hosting anyone's event, especially one I didn't agree to." Her eyes narrowed. "You really want to be that neighbor during my wedding week?" "Yes," I replied, "exactly that neighbor." She huffed, turned on her heel, and stormed off the porch like she was leaving a palace. The poor planner mouthed a silent sorry and followed her. I figured that was the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke up to 3 HOA citations in my mailbox. The first was for unauthorized exterior decorations. I had a wind chime. The second cited improper trash can storage. I had wheeled it out 6 inches early. The third claimed excessive use of water because apparently, filling your pool had now become a crime. It was clear as day that Catherine had weaponized the HOA to retaliate. Still, I played it cool. I took photos, noted everything down, and filed formal disputes. But inside, the fuse was lit. On Wednesday, I got a heads up from my neighbor, Rick. "Hey man," he said, "Catherine just dropped this off." He handed me a fancy pastel flyer titled Bridal Bliss Pool Party for Saturday at 3 p.m., with my address boldly printed below. I swear I could hear steam hissing out of my ears. That night, I checked my security footage. Catherine and her maid of honor had snuck into my backyard after dark, measuring the patio and whispering about floral setups and lighting options. One of them even tripped over my garden hose and knocked over a solar light. I watched the footage with my jaw clenched. This wasn't just nerve, it was a full-on hostile takeover. Thursday, I attended the emergency HOA meeting she conveniently called. I arrived with copies of her flyer, screenshots of her posts on the community Facebook group, and a USB stick full of security footage. She stood at the head of the room like she was hosting a bridal expo, talking about celebrating love in our beautiful neighborhood. I raised my hand. "Yes, neighbor," she asked, fake smile barely hiding her scowl. "I'd like to know when the HOA voted to turn my private pool into a community wedding venue." The room went quiet. Catherine stammered, claiming it was more of a community spirit thing and a friendly favor. I showed the evidence videos, flyers, the works. The silence turned into awkward coughs. She tried to pivot, claiming I'd verbally agreed. No one bought it. She was exposed and humiliated, but not defeated, not yet. Friday, She showed up with a box of cupcakes and a card that said, "Let's not ruin the wedding." I opened the card. It read, "We forgive you. See you tomorrow." I didn't even open the cupcakes. That evening, I pulled out my old festival equipment. Years ago, I had helped organize concerts, so I had lights, speakers, and a 25-gallon commercial-grade foam cannon I'd used once during a university spring bash. I cleaned it, tested it, and aimed it right at the center of the pool. By Saturday morning, the whole neighborhood was buzzing with anticipation. People knew, even if they weren't saying it out loud, that something was going to go down. I positioned myself on the back porch with my camera-ready phone and foam remote. At exactly 2:58 p.m., the first white van rolled up, followed by 3 more. Catherine stepped out in a white sundress and heels, like she was walking onto a movie set. Bridesmaids in matching pink rompers strutted behind her. The DJ began unloading gear. Catherine waved like royalty, shouting, "Let the party begin." That's when I clicked the remote. The foam cannon hissed to life with a low rumble, and in less than 10 seconds, a thick wall of white began pouring over the pool like a floodgate had opened in the sky. For a moment, everyone froze, staring in confusion. Then the foam bubbled and froth rose like an incoming tide. Catherine's perfectly curled hair was the first casualty. A surge of foam slammed into her like a pie to the face. She shrieked, stumbling backward, arms flailing. A champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the concrete. The bridesmaids screamed too, one slipping and landing in the shallow end, her high heels flying into the air like dolphins. I didn't move. I stood on the deck, arms folded, remote still in my grip. The look on Catherine's face when she realized this wasn't a prank, a sprinkler malfunction, or even a random mishap but an intentional act was worth every minute of preparation. She locked eyes with me, foam dripping from her bangs, and screamed, "What have you done?" The foam, of course, was completely non-toxic, designed for parties, child-safe, and environmentally friendly. But it also made walking nearly impossible and turned any surface into a slick mess. Bridesmaids tried to help each other up, only to fall again, shrieking like they'd been dropped into a vat of jello. Catherine stomped toward the decker, at least tried to. Her shoes sank with every step forward, slipping sideways. Eventually, she tore her heels off and charged barefoot, eyes wild, foaming like a feral cat. "You're going to pay for this," she screeched, waving one of her shoes like it was a weapon. I raised my lemonade glass. "You trespassed on private property," I said. "I'm just cleaning it up." She screamed again. "You said we could use it." "No," I replied calmly. "You said you were using it." I said no, and when you insisted, I decided to help you make it memorable. The DJ, realizing his equipment was now covered in soap foam, started shouting about liability. One of the bartenders tried to back out but slipped, hitting the drinks table and sending orange juice and vodka flying. 2 groomsmen huddled by the patio umbrella, shielding themselves like survivors in a storm. It was absolute chaos. Then, just when it seemed like it couldn't escalate any further, Catherine did exactly what I'd predicted. She pulled out her phone, dialed 911, and started screaming about an emergency wedding sabotage. I could hear her from the deck. "Yes, officer, there's been an attack. He ruined my wedding. We're trapped in foam. The electronics are sparking." To her credit, she put on a good performance. She cried, gasped, and even fake coughed like the foam was choking her. I stayed silent, just watching, sipping lemonade. While she sobbed to the dispatcher, I pulled out my own phone and started recording. What Catherine didn't know was that I'd already informed local law enforcement about a possible trespassing situation. I had given them timestamps, security footage, and written warnings I'd sent her via email and text. I wasn't reacting, I was executing a plan. 15 minutes later, the sirens rolled in. 2 sheriff deputies pulled into the driveway, barely avoiding a bridesmaid who had fled the foam zone and was now crying on the sidewalk. Catherine, seeing her reinforcements arrive, perked up immediately and ran toward them, flapping her arms like she was signaling a helicopter. "Officers," she shouted, slipping slightly but recovering with dramatic flair. "He attacked us. He launched chemical foam during my bridal party. My guests are injured. My dress is ruined." The officers looked at her, then at the bubble-filled yard, then back at me. I waved. "Afternoon, gentlemen." They turned to Catherine. "You said this was your property?" "Yes, I mean no. I mean, I was using it with permission, she stammered. The shorter deputy raised an eyebrow. Can you show us that permission in writing? Catherine froze. The taller one turned to me. Sir, can you tell us what happened here? Sure, I said. This is my property. That's my pool. Those people entered without consent after being told not to. I have video of them trespassing, plus emails and HOA meeting footage proving their knowledge of the boundaries. I also have a permit for this foam cannon, which is legally rated for recreational use and completely non-toxic. I informed the HOA board and your department in advance, just in case. Catherine's jaw practically hit the pavement. The deputies took notes, asked questions, and eventually told everyone to leave the property. Catherine refused at first. You're just going to let him get away with this? She screamed. He embarrassed me. My fiancé is on his way. We were supposed to have pictures here. If your fiancé was invited, one of the deputies said, he'll have to meet you on the sidewalk because, as of now, you're trespassing. If you don't vacate immediately, we'll have no choice but to detain you. The silence that followed was better than foam. Catherine backed away slowly, seething, drenched in bubbles and humiliation. She gathered her soaked bridesmaids like a general retreating from battle, ordering them to grab whatever belongings hadn't been ruined by soap. The DJ, having packed up his damaged equipment, muttered under his breath about never doing another suburban gig again. I leaned against the railing and watched them go, the foam machine finally winding down behind me. But the best part? The absolute icing on this absurd wedding cake was when Catherine's fiancé finally arrived. He stepped out of his Tesla in a crisp suit, bouquet in hand, and took one look at the foam-filled yard, the hysterical bridesmaids, and his dripping, furious fiancé. He turned to her and said, You told me this was a resort pool. The look on Catherine's face as he got back in his car and drove away was worth every bubble.